Alright, so I want to make a video updating everyone as usual, as well as get into some other things. And it seems like every day there's even bigger and bigger things coming out, and more and more crazy stuff happening. So, yeah, let's get right into it. So, the Canadian numbers have actually been, like I mentioned, pretty flat over the last couple weeks. I mean, you see 33,909 cases with 1,506 dead. And one of the reasons why is that a lot of people are recovering. And there's another thing I'll get into towards the end of this video as well. But Alberta had 165 new cases, which is down from the last couple days. So that's a good sign. But like I say, the models that I think the models that we can at least trust showed the peak to be around the end of April, early May at the absolute latest. So it's like I keep saying, we need to come up with a plan to figure out a way to get past this because we can't keep the economy closed for too long. Again, and the idea doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think I'll get into it this other story I wanted to talk about because I'll talk more about it there anyway. Um, Getting into some other stuff here again. This is from Corey Morgan, and he says Alberta has 4.3 million people, 119 of them are in the hospital due to COVID-19. We need to start backing off on the lockdown, folks. The doomsday models are wrong. Now, again, this doesn't make any sense. That most hospitals, from what I've seen, are have less people in them than they would normally have this time of year because elective surgeries, any non-essential medical work is not being done right now. So, and a lot of these hospitals, like I say, are completely like I mentioned too at the hospital that as a family member was at. It was super quiet. They're at a different hospital now. That one's quiet as well. So to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we're again basically in a nutshell we're overreacting to this. I think is the big thing to point out here. And the reason why the government's overreacting to it is that they want to experiment with how much they can get away with taking away civil liberties, which I'm going to put out another really big story on that. But that's another story in and of itself. They want to experiment with the idea of forced vaccinations, which I think is absolutely draconian, and anyone who supports that is absolutely insane. And never ever accuse someone else of being authoritarian or far right or communist, whatever you want to be. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Never accuse someone of having a crazed, fringe ideology if you support the idea of forced vaccinations for the simple point that number one, they're not 100% safe and effective by definition. Vaccine companies are immune from liability, which means they don't have a whole lot of incentive to make their product 100% safe and effective. All they're worried about is making money. And I can't stand specifically these lefties that complain all day and night about corporations and how greedy they are, but yet we have these pharmaceutical companies that are literally raking in profits, hurting people and not having to pay the price for it. Like imagine if an oil company was killing people or literally damaging people's health, and yet and I mean directly, I don't mean indirectly, oh, climate change, but I mean directly, because vaccines directly can harm you, and yet they're immune from lawsuits, from litigation, from any of that kind of stuff. Just imagine the uproar. But when vaccine companies, pharma companies do it, it's nobody cares. So again, I just wanted to point that out. And again, I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out a legit reason to why we're overreacting to this so much. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And the thing too is that the politicians have completely flip-flopped. Completely flip-flopped. Off the start, it was, if you want to close the borders, if you want to wear masks and all this kind of stuff, you're crazy, you're conspiracy theorist. Now it's if you don't want to have a draconian authoritarian everybody stay in your house lockdown order, then I mean, again, it's completely flip-flop. Like, can we have something, we've already taken this very seriously. It's clearly not as bad as what it was projected to be. The models prove that. Let's figure out a plan to get back to work within the next month. Why is that unreasonable? To me, that makes absolutely no sense why that's unreasonable. and I'm talking about for people that are young and healthy. The big the big thing the government should be talking about right now, and this is just all the proof you need that they don't actually care about people. They don't actually care about keeping people safe. If they actually cared, they would be putting out educational videos and campaign day and night on how to boost your immune system. Because if you have a very good immune system, this virus isn't going to hurt you. Yeah, you might be sick for a little bit, but you're going to get over it no problem. And the fact that they're not doing that just goes to show that they don't actually care. They clearly have sinister motives. Um, this is from well, Global originally, and I think a lot of news outlets publish this. And again, this is just an absolutely scary as can possibly be scenario here. They have this. They pose this question: do you think people should be limited to one trip to the grocery store each week to prevent the spread? And again, this is just one step closer towards communism. That won't work because, again, we know it won't work. We know it won't work. I guarantee it won't work. I would bet every dollar I have it won't work. And when it doesn't work, the government will be, oh, that didn't work. So now we're going to have bread lines, or maybe whatever the modern equivalent to bread lines would be. And then, sure enough, we're communists. Again, and for all the people that would defend something like this kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight. You don't go from a bastion of a free market to a totalitarian, authoritarian, fascist or communist country. That's not how it works. Hitler was voted in. It took on what 10 years roughly before they, went crazy. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight. So again, people need to understand this kind of stuff, and to me, it's number one, it's an ignorance of history, and it's an ignorance of the ability to think critically, and an ignorance to people to be able to put two and two together. And the government knows this kind of stuff. The government knows that people are too ignorant and too brainwashed to put this kind of two and two together, basically, because they know it's. And they'll always accuse you of, oh, you want people to die if you disagree with it. That's always how they frame it. They take this draconian position. It's like, if you don't agree with me, you want people to die, and that's how they do it. And the thing that bothers me too is that you have all these people defending this kind of stuff, largely because they're lefties that are either communist or they prefer communism to capitalism. In which case they'll defend this kind of stuff, and most of them do. They'll probably wouldn't. A lot of them wouldn't be honest about it, but most people on the left would prefer communism to capitalism. If you don't, well then, what are you doing? You wouldn't be vote. You wouldn't be voting. You wouldn't be supporting for this kind of stuff if you did. So again, this is something that's incredibly scary. That I mean, it needs to be taken seriously. Like, there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to go out. Like, no reason, absolutely none. And you see, I mean, let's get into the next thing here. This is from Ezra Levant. He goes on to say, out of 16,798 cases in Quebec, there's been a total of 14 people under the age of 60 who have died. Um, Literally nobody under the age of 30. How about we focus on the seniors' homes where 70% of the deaths occur, and let the rest of us go back to work and school? And again, like, I've yet to hear someone come up with a legitimate reason against this kind of stuff. Like, I'd really like to hear it. And I mean, they'll say it. It's, oh, you hate old people. Like, no, keep them in quarantine, and the rest of us will go prevent the greatest recession of all time, which may still happen regardless, but at least we have a fighting chance from occurring. And I guarantee you, like I said, there's people committing suicide. There's people that aren't going to have jobs that are later going to commit suicide. There's people that are going to have major depression, and again, I guarantee you, the cure will be worse than the disease in the long run. The history books will either be ripe with bias and, the government just flat out lying to people, or the truth will come out and people will be like, man, were they dumb to completely destroy their economy, to bring on the greatest recession of all time, just to prevent a very small number of deaths, which a lot of them could have been prevented regardless of what you did. Again, to me, that makes no sense. And like I said, again, I'm trying to come up with realistic theories to why we need to continue doing this. So I'm not saying we should open up everything tomorrow. I'm just saying we've had plenty of time. The government should have had plenty of time to come up with a plan to be like, hey, we're going to open up the economy in May, regardless of when you want to do it. I think any later than the end of May to me is. I think we're going to be too far gone. And at that point, too, I don't think they're fooling anyone again. I mean, they'll fool a lot of people, but they're not fooling anybody with any shred of critical thinking skills at that point, because by then the cases will have gone way down. And I mean, the other problem too is that the cases largely are overreported too. Like, you hear all these stories, and I think they're true to an extent, of people who clearly die of other causes, but yet they have the virus, and they're listed on the death certificate of dying of the virus when they clearly most likely didn't die of the virus. So that's the other problem with this too, is that the deaths are most likely estimated, or over, calculated. But again, like I said, I don't. I've yet to hear of a good theory to why we shouldn't be going back to work and everything very soon. Because, like I say, people still have this fantasy that when we go back, everything's just going to turn right back on, and it'll be all hunky dory. That's not how it's going to work. We were due for a major recession. The recession is here, and if we don't go back to work, it's going to get even worse. And we could have a complete and utter dollar collapse. We could have a complete and utter societal collapse too. This could bring on. Like, if we wait another 2-3 months to go back, and more people have lost their jobs, even more amount of people have depression, even more people are alcoholics and drug users and smokers and all this kind of stuff. Not only that too, there's been studies that show, social isolation is one of the worst things for your health. Like, literally, social isolation is terrible for people's health, especially mental health. And again, I think we could have an even bigger mental health issue with society. We're gonna have, again, mass unemployment, even coming out of this too. Like I say, I don't understand why people have this fantasy of, oh, it's just gonna turn right back on and we're not gonna have any issues. Again, it's not going to work that way. It's not gonna work that way. So again, and again, people need to know that. And the last thing I wanted to bring up here, this is from Spencer Fernando, and he says liberal government gave 41 million of your taxpayer dollars in foreign aid to China. Now, again, people are probably wondering, why would they do this? China has plenty of their own money. Well, the simple reason that China just turned around and gave the Trudeau Foundation I think it was like a $500,000 or $1 million, and more than likely, number one, these kind of people, the Trudeau Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, all these kind of people, they make money off their charities. A lot of the money they keep for themselves, or they funnel it to themselves in some way, shape, or form. Not only that, I'm sure they could figure out a way for the Chinese government to get Justin Trudeau some money for some foreign aid. I guarantee you, literally bet every possession, every dollar I have, that because of them giving China this foreign aid, that Justin Trudeau got a kickback in some way, shape, or form. Again, I would bet every possession I have that that's the case. Because why would you give China money and not get a kickback? It makes absolutely no sense. And I mean, one of the other reasons too is Justin Trudeau loves their basic dictatorship. That's obviously the other reason. But again, guaranteed he got a kickback of some point, whether it's indirectly through his charity or directly, they just gave him some cash. One way or the other, they gave him a kickback. Um, but anyway, that's the video for today. Like I said, a lot of important stuff coming out today too. And to me, like, the big thing that we need, that should be the discussion now, is what is it going to take for the majority of people to wake up and be like, hey, this isn't what it was made out to be. Like, it wasn't. It's not what it's made out to be. There's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be going back to work like next week. I mean, we could. I mean, if we would have got on it earlier. I mean, the government, they're sitting on their butt doing nothing. They're arguing about BS crap that doesn't matter a lot of the time. Figuring out a way to take more civil liberties and to find out a way to force vaccinations down your throat. Um, Rather than figuring out a way of, hey, like I said, the plan should have. I've been saying this for over a week now, probably 2-3 weeks. I don't even know how much. But again, we should come up with a plan to be like, hey, we're going to open the economy at some point in May. Let's come up with a plan to where any scenario that we can imagine that could come up when we open things back up, this is going to be the plan for how we react to that. We're going to have a stockpile of medical equipment, stockpile there, everything we need, and we'll be good to go, because we'll be right ready for any problem that comes up. But that's not what they're doing, and that's what anybody with half a brain would be doing. Anyone with half a brain would be doing that. So anyway, I'm going to leave the video there. If you'd like to, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal. I got linked in the description. I also got an email address for e-transfer. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last thing, as always, check out my BitChute channel.